Okay, this is just going to be a brief run-through of Industrial Revolution background because we're going to try to do more in-class hands-on stuff for this unit. So a lot of your PowerPoints and stuff, I'm going to try and record and throw them on YouTube for you. So let us begin. Industrial Revolution. First thing you notice in these pictures is there is something that happened where we go from this really manual agricultural society to clearly more of an industrial society on a mass scale, which inevitably leads to the society that we have today. So let's look at some of the causes. First off, Great Britain is in a perfect position. Think about that. They had access to a number of resources from their colonies. Well, the time period we're looking at is around 1750, so keep in mind that Great Britain still had its colonies in the Americas. Cotton is the main material that starts all of this because textiles, which are fabrics and cloths, provide something that we use every day: clothing. Great Britain had an excess of coal and iron resources, which were essential to creating and maintaining machinery for factories. And by being able to power these machines, textiles were able to be mass-produced for the first time in history. Up until this point, we've had the stocking frame, which was used to create socks, the seed drill, that's for improved planting and quicker planting, and the steam engine were already in use. So let's progress into the early 1800s. By this point in time, we have more canals being built, and that cuts down on sea travel. Roads were being improved, and railroads became a lot more prominent across the continent. And this allowed for goods to be shipped in a timely manner. More importantly, though, more goods were being produced, and they were being distributed quicker than at any other time in human history. In terms of agriculture, farmers were able to do more with less manpower. What happens with this is that it leaves many people out of work. As a result, a lot of them went to the city to find jobs in the factories. This only furthered the Industrial Revolution. Society became less rural and more urban. That is to say, a lot of people moved from the farmland to the cities looking for work. Another cause is population growth. Since Great Britain had so many colonies, it had that much more people to take care of. The reason why population rose can also be attributed to the production of more food. I know that sounds kind of weird, but follow me on this. If more people were able to receive a healthy diet on a consistent basis, they would live longer lives. And statistically, that would make them more likely to produce offspring. With more people and land came more demand for goods. So Great Britain now had the means to produce those goods on a mass scale. Furthermore, the wealthy were looking for ways to invest their money. To them, what better way than to put it into new technologies? As you can see, everything aligned perfectly to set this up for Great Britain. And you see here the population growth. It goes from 100 million in 1700 to 190 million in the span of 100 years. And on these pictures here, although the people in the upper left are not from the early 1800s, because photographs were not around yet, you do get a sense of the crowds of workers who lined up for these factory jobs. I mean, you can just see it written all over their faces. On the bottom right, we see the depiction of industrialism's impact on the environment. If you recall from the beginning of the year in language arts, there was a Shel Silverstein poem called Pekin that some groups read, and that criticized the effects of industrialization. If any of you have ever seen the Disney movie Fern Gully, that too is another critique of industrialization. The immediate impact of these events was largely positive, though, but the long-term effects include the environmentalist movement and the debates that rage on today about having a green society. Let's move on to how is life going to change because of the Industrial Revolution. Well, first off, child labor. if any of you are not familiar with this, this is going to blow your minds. Boys and girls started working at age 7. That was fairly common. And the reason why they would have children work is that they could squeeze between the large machines to change parts, and that was extremely dangerous, and it led to a fair amount of deaths. Because there were times when those kids would get caught in the machines, and they would start working again, and there's nothing they can do. We also have long hours. 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, all year long. So the idea of the 9 to 5 workday, your basic 8-hour workday with your hour lunch, 5 days a week with some vacation time, that was not even a thought at this point in time. That comes later, though, when we have the rise of labor unions, which is also a part of this whole era. And there's also changes on the home front. People left their homes to work, and it became commonplace for women and children to work outside the home. So the days of the man being the breadwinner of your family, that is the sole provider, those weren't entirely true anymore, because women would work outside the home. Of course, what will this lead to? The idea of urbanization. Just population moves from farms to cities, which we talked about in the last slide, which would also mean that city areas grow in size. And I think you guys might be able to infer what would happen if a city were unprepared for a large influx of people and their areas grow. And if you have the same amount of resources but you have more people, more than likely your quality of life will decline a little bit in the large cities, especially with sanitation. So now we move on to Changes, which is a David Bowie song, but I'm sure none of you, or very few of you, got the outdated pop cultural reference. The changes the Industrial Revolution brought are ones that you can easily surmise. Life, manufacturing, and farming were made easier and better, at least short term. And inventions in one area often led to inventions in another. I think the railroad is a perfect example. Think about what the tracks are made from. Steel. Well, in order to shape those tracks, you need a furnace capable of melting steel. The Industrial Revolution made that possible. Then look at the train itself. James Watt's invention of the steam engine led Richard Trevithick to invent the first engine locomotive. What did the railroad do? It increased the capacity of goods being shipped, and it decreased the amount of time it took them to get to their destination. Communication systems were also improved. Samuel Morse's invention of the telegraph led to more effective communication. But also, poor working conditions led to the rise of labor unions and Karl Marx's theory of communism. Yes, that's right, we finally get to talk about communism. And the Industrial Revolution is the framework by which our society exists today, which I mentioned back in the beginning. Lastly, there is a domino effect here, as you see at the bottom. The Industrial Revolution led to citizens feeling prideful of their country's achievements, notably in Great Britain. You know, we are the first ones to come up with all these great ideas and put them into action. We have the rise of our industrial society. We're very proud of that. Thus, we see the influence of nationalism that begins to creep into our year-long story here. And with that very prideful feeling and the wealth accumulated through the Industrial Revolution came the idea of, well, we have money and we have this technology. Let's go make more money, which would mean let's go get some more land, which is the period of imperialism. And it is a very ugly period in modern history that the world is still recovering from, and in some respects, at least depending on who you ask, imperialism still exists today. And that is where we will end up with this unit. We will go through the Industrial Revolution, its effects on nationalism, and then nationalism's effects on imperialism. The last thing I have for you is asking you to come up with kind of 3 short arguments about why this would be called a revolution. And this will most likely be checked in tomorrow in social studies. As it says, though not troops, guns, or military were used, why has this time period... oh, typo, didn't even realize it. Why has this time period been called a revolution? Use at least 3 examples to support your argument. Format your response in 1 sentence. You can literally copy that down. This period in time was considered a revolution because A, B, and C, and write this sentence at the bottom of your notes. The first thing I would ask you is to consider what is a revolution. Hint, the dictionary may be your friend. Google, your friend. So take a look at that and see if you can fit these technological advances into that definition somehow. And we will talk more about this tomorrow in class. But I think you guys will agree that 11 minutes and 30 seconds of notes is certainly better than 2 days. So, all right, I'm out of here. See ya.